Hey everybody, Chris here on VarsityGaming. Today I'm going to be looking through the designer notes for the mid-season of Operation Chimera. This was just released today, or I guess yesterday from the time the video comes out, at noon. This entire patch notes talks about the changes they'll be making halfway through the season. I think it's going to be after the Pro League in Atlantic City, but I'm not entirely sure. And yeah, basically changes that are going to be happening to operators and balancing overall for the game. Quickly going to add something in before we get into the graphs. I record this under the impression that the win delta meant win-loss ratio. However, after quickly looking through the patch notes again, it literally says right above the graph that the win delta is the average win ratio when an operator is picked minus the average win ratio when an operator is not picked. So when an operator has a negative win delta, that means, say for attackers, the attacking team wins more without Thermite than with Thermite. Anyways, back to the recording. The first part of the patch notes, they basically talk about how they choose what operators are going to get nerfed, buffed, whatever. The main things that they look at are the win delta and the pick rate. And this is how they kind of graphed out how operators are balanced on the overall. Ideally, they want most of the operators to be close to this cross right here in the middle, because then that means that they have a good pick rate and an even win-loss. They even said that their main goal is to try to get every single operator as close to this line as possible, which overall I think is a little bit of an ambitious goal, but it could be possible. And also it's important to note that all the information they took to make this graph is from ranked PC, the Platinum and Diamond level, in the Year 3 patch 1.0. And just taking a quick look at this graph, the huge outliers are obviously Lion, Twitch, and Ashe. These are the overpicked and too strong operators. That means they have more wins than losses, and they're picked higher than any other operator. On the bottom side, we have Hibana and Thermite, who are overpicked but don't have the best win-loss. They actually have negative win-losses. And then everyone over here is just a clusterfuck. But it's interesting to note, by just taking a quick look at this graph, by Ubisoft's own metrics, technically Sledge, Zofia, and Blackbeard are the three most balanced attack operators. Just interesting to think about, because I know a lot of people still complain thinking that Blackbeard is overpowered. Now let's move on to defenders. The exact same format, but a little more spread out than the attackers. So right off the bat, the three most balanced defenders according to Ubisoft stats are Doc, Valkyrie, and Pulse, which overall I kind of agree with. All these operators are kind of situational and don't always provide the best information because they can be countered, especially Valkyrie. However, defenders do have more overpicked and too strong operators. Right now they have Vigil, Legion, Jager, and Bandit. I believe Smoke is lying underneath the win-loss delta line, so I don't think he's considered overpowered. But these four still are. We'll talk about Vigil more down below because there is a nerf coming with him. But right now they have still Legion, Jager, and Bandit. I'm not entirely sure how they will go about nerfing them. They haven't had any plans to nerf them yet, but they are considered a bit too strong. And overpicked but too weak, we have Mirror and Smoke. They talked about this in the AMA, which I'll have a link to down below if you want to take a look. But basically they said that even though Mira and Smoke are both overpicked, they are not considered overpowered. Because right now their gadgets don't provide a huge amount of power, they're just very good utility. And if they were to nerf it, it really ultimately wouldn't affect the pick rate. And personally I agree, even though it kind of sucks to have a Smoke and Mira every single defense round in the high diamond levels, it's still kind of a necessary evil. And they also have their downsides. Mirrors can be countered by Twitch and basically anyone with a gun, and Smoke can be countered again by anyone with a gun because he usually has to peek out in order to throw his smoke grenades. So they have their balances. The one operator that I found really interesting was that Cav was somehow considered underpicked but too strong. In most of my time playing Platinum and Diamond, it is incredibly rare to run into a Cav. So I feel like those situations where she actually works have to be in the low plat lobbies, because I can't remember the last time I actually saw a diamond level player play Cav. Most of them will play Cav if they're plat 3, and then that means the lobby overall could be like gold 1, gold 2, because plat 3s will play with a huge variety of people. So I'm wondering if Cav is considered too strong simply because of the type of people that would normally play her. But who knows, I could be talking on my ass. Maybe there's a ton of diamonds out there that somehow play Cav. And an interesting note to take is that Ella is now more in line with the pick rate that Ubisoft wanted. She still has a good win-loss ratio, but her pick rate is back in line. Before, I believe it used to be somewhere like out here where she had a huge win-loss and a huge pick rate. Now she's been brought back in. And also another thing to keep in mind with all this information is that this is only for ranked. Ranked is not the same as competitive. If this was competitive, Lion would have a 100 or close to pick rate. He doesn't though. And that's why even people like Bandit or Ashe have a higher pick rate than him, because in ranked, it's a completely different meta. People are not always coordinating to the level of competitive. They're not even close to that level, actually. And a lot of times people are playing by themselves. So people like Lion may not be the most overpowered in ranked, but they're still an issue, which we're going to talk about in the next section right now. So the big changes coming to this patch are a huge amount of balance updates for a bunch of different operators. First one is Lion. This is one that I talked about before, I think. I'm pretty sure I've brought it up in other videos that Lion is getting nerfed. The big changes being made is that he will now have 2 scans instead of 3 noted down here, and the cooldown between each scan is increasing from 10 seconds to 20 seconds. Also, another thing to note is that if a player gets detected but stops moving, they will no longer appear outlined. Right now, if say you're on site and move for just a small fraction of a second, you will start getting detected for the rest of the scan, even if you stop moving. Now that will no longer be the case, so it'll definitely help for those rare situations where it glitches out and someone starts getting scanned. They'll immediately stop getting scanned because they're not moving. They said that this is a pretty big change because now, although the attackers might know where you are, they won't know what stance you're in, which I kind of disagree with. On the overall, say you are roaming off-site and then you get detected for a small fraction of a second, but they know where you are. It doesn't really matter if you change your stance to know where you are. That's a pretty big component. I guess the only benefit will be that if, say, we'll use Oregon Kids Room for an example. I'm sure most of you guys can picture what that is. If, say, you run into the kids' room and then you lie down, they'll know where your last location was, but they won't know that you were lying down. So they'll start shooting through the bedroom wall at head level, trying to hit you, and they won't. I guess it'll waste some time, but in the end, they still know where you are and your general area. They can hunt you down. It'll just help defenders survive a little longer, I guess. But they did mention that if you're detected very briefly, it'll be really hard for the attackers to locate your position, which is true. If, say, again, using the same example, I'm roaming by kids' room and I move for a split second and I get detected, if I stop moving, it'll go away quick enough that most people probably wouldn't be able to understand what happened or where I was in time. Unless someone is looking actively where I am, they probably won't know. The only thing that I would like to see changed in the future for Lion, I think this will bring him more in line. I still think he'll be very overpowered, but the one thing I would like to see changed is I think his scan should be reduced in time. Right now it is 3-second warning, 5-second scan, 10-second cooldown, which will be changed to 20 seconds, but that 5-second scan is pretty broken. The fact that it lasts so long makes it very easy for attackers to hold off defenders. I think that scan should be reduced from 5 to about 3 seconds. Maybe. I can maybe even see it going down to 2 seconds. Overall, I still think Lion is just a fundamentally broken character, but if they want to keep him the way he is, I still think the scan itself should be nerfed. Like the time for it. And now moving on to Jager, he's got an indirect buff, is that his ADSs / magpies will no longer target Hibana's X-Cairo pellets. How it is right now is if you were to shoot a row of pellets into a room, all the ADSs will try to destroy as many of the pellets as they can. And since one row of Hibana pellets has 6 different pellets, that means that all the ADSs could be absorbed with that one row. Which is pretty fucking broken because then you can start grenading in sight, you can start smoking out objective without them able to do anything. Hibana would sacrifice one row of Hibana pellets, which really is nothing in the overall, and you would destroy all of Jaeger's ADSs. Pretty imbalanced. So that will no longer be the case, and if you want to use up all of Jaeger's ADS charges, you're going to have to use actual grenades. So that'll help destroy more flashbangs and smokes in the future, and also frag grenades. Next up we have Blitz, who's getting a decent amount of nerfs, which overall I think is kind of justified, but at the same time will make him even more frustrating to play. They're basically going to make him not be able to use his flash nearly as much. The range is being reduced from 8 meters to 5 meters, and he's also only going to have 4 charges instead of 5. I think as it stands right now, it's already pretty frustrating playing as Blitz because half the time you will try to flash someone when they're well within your 8-meter range and they won't get flashed at all. So now reducing that range will just make it prone to much more issues. However, I can also totally understand it because on the defender side, it is also really fucking annoying to play against Blitz if he rushes you and you're the only one against him. You really can't do anything, and it's pretty much a guaranteed kill for him. In my personal preference, I'd say just change Blitz back to a 1-speed shield, take away his 2-speed, done. He's balanced again. But I'm sure Ubisoft probably says their numbers say otherwise. Now moving on to Vigil. Vigil was an interesting operator because when he was first announced for White Noise, almost everyone, including myself, said that he would be pretty much useless in Pro League because overall staying away from drones really doesn't seem to serve much purpose, but it turns out it's actually incredibly useful. He is one of the most picked operators in competitive as well as ranked, and it is a very frustrating operator to play against because since his cloak lasted for 30 seconds, it's very, very hard to track him down. Although you can track his general vicinity, there's still issues with what level will he be on and also what exact location will he be in. And the fact that he has 2 primary weapons essentially for both of his guns, it's pretty hard to play against him. Even if you all rush him, he can kill you with one gun, swap to the other one, and kill the rest of you. So nerfs being made to him is that instead of having 30 seconds of his cloaking device, he'll now have 12 seconds. And the refill time is being reduced from 12 to 6 seconds. So it'll be much easier to track him down, which I'm happy with because right now, with his 30 seconds, it's very hard to track him down because you have to wait for it to be depleted and then look for him. And then by the time you find him, his thing will probably have already recharged. You can put it back on after you found him and he'll change location. And then good luck finding him again. So I think this will make him less frustrating to track down and he won't waste as much time for the attackers. The main thing that they noted is that they want to increase the amount of skill it takes to play him. Right now you can just toggle on your cloak and just wait the 30 seconds. It'll recharge in 12 seconds, put it back on. It doesn't take much skill to hide. Now you're actually going to have to toggle it back on and off and use it effectively. And then next we have Hibana. Hibana, already getting that nerf technically with Jager's ADSs, is now getting another one, is that she's losing her Claymore and getting breaching charges instead. Which I was pretty surprised to hear about, because for the most part, a lot of people don't take Claymore with Hibana, at least in ranked. I see almost everyone taking flashbangs. But I'm not entirely sure how it is in the competitive scene. Giving her breaching charges opens her up to the option of being more destructive, but I feel like she'll kind of face the same predicament as Ashe. Almost every single Ashe player I know only takes flashbangs. The only time I see someone playing Ashe with breaching charges is if they're new to the game. So most people probably won't bring breaching charges with Hibana, they'll just keep bringing flashbangs. So I'm not a huge fan of this nerf because it basically just means, okay, you only have one option as a gadget. And I can't really see many situations where you'd want to use breaching charges as Hibana, so overall I think it's kind of just a shitty change, but at the same time I get it. Having her Claymore makes her more powerful, so removing that Claymore makes her somewhat less powerful at least. So overall I'm not too sure how I feel about that. And then with Ying, Ying is now losing her smoke grenades and getting a Claymore, which is awesome, because right now, the most annoying combo and the most boring combo is Ying and Glaz. And I've even been playing Ying a lot more recently because it's fucking actually ridiculous how overpowered she is. You can smoke out a entranceway so they don't know when you push in. You throw in your 3 Candelas and then you rush in and kill everyone. It works so well. But now that she doesn't have smoke grenades, she can't really protect herself as she runs in. And it'll definitely make competitive at least somewhat more interesting to watch, because right now every single team is running the exact same combo. It is Lion, Ying, and Glaz, and then 2 of whoever else you want just to make it a little more interesting. That's it. It's the same thing every single game, and now with Ying losing her smoke, she'll be a little less viable. I think she'll still probably get picked because you can combo her with other smoke grenades, but at least she doesn't bring her own. And there's more operator changes being made, or at least more operator notes, but they wanted to talk about LMG damage here because of Ying's LMG. So all of the LMGs in-game are getting buffed by a small amount of damage. Actually, not really small. A lot of them are getting a decent amount of damage. So right now with the guns, the new normal damage has gone up about 9 across the board for Zophia's LMG. At a long distance, they still do the same damage. And then the interesting thing is with heavy barrel, Zophia's LMG actually does less damage. Which, I'm not too sure why. That kind of seems weird to me. So the LMG by default does 41 damage, and then with the heavy barrel it does 29 damage. It seems like a pretty huge difference and makes me wonder why anyone would ever take the heavy barrel or the suppressed. You'd pretty much be better off with just going with the normal. But I guess if you're going to go for at a distance of 40 meters, it still does higher by 3. Still don't think it's worth it. But anyways, moving on. Ying, her LMG is also getting buffed by about 9 damage for normal, and then 8 for suppressed, but losing 3 at long range. And for heavy barrel, it's going up 4 across the board. So pretty good for LMG because hers is very, very lackluster right now. Although the one big benefit that it has compared to the other ones is a very fast reload time. It's basically just a magazine. And then we have Capitao who's getting about 14 across the board for all of... And then we have Capitao who's getting about a 14 damage increase, which is pretty significant for LMGs. And then 11 and 10 for suppressed. And then 7 for heavy barrel. So I'd say Capitao's LMG is probably the best out of all of them right now, but I think it also has the lowest fire rate. And then the last one is Fuse's LMG, which also I guess affects Finka because she has the same one. It is now losing 1 damage, but gaining 6 at a distance for normal, and then losing 1 for suppressed, but gaining 8 at a distance, and then losing 1 across the board for heavy barrel. I'm assuming these changes to Fuse's LMG, they're getting a little weird because of Finka, if I had to guess, because she's really the only one that runs it right now. If you ever are going to run it, you probably should run it on her, just because of the Finka boost. Alright, now back to operators, talking about operators that aren't getting changed just yet, but stuff they want to mention. With Finka, they know that she is overpowered, or at least has a too high of a win rate, and they're going to look into why they should change her. I can tell you right now why she's overpowered is because of her boost, how many benefits it gives you. The fact that it affects every single person on your team equally and has like 9 benefits and 6 disadvantages is pretty fucking powerful. The biggest one being that the recoil, it gets reduced by like 90%. That's huge. I can't see why anyone wouldn't want her. And the only reason people aren't saying that she's overpowered is because right now she gets outshined by Lion. The best comparison I can come up with is a computer comparison using graphics cards. So basically, Finka and Lion are the equivalent of having 2 graphics cards, a GTX 1080 Ti and a GTX 1080. They're both super fucking powerful, but the 1080 Ti is better than the 1080. But just because one is more powerful than the other doesn't mean that they're not both powerful. Finka is a 1080, Lion is a 1080 Ti. And the worst part about Finka is that it's going to be very hard to get the analytics as to why she's so powerful, I'm assuming. Because it's not technically herself who gets all the results, it's her teammates. She pops the boost and then Ashe will get 5 kills. I'm sure they have some analytics to track, why it happened, but it's also hard to determine whether it was just that Ashe was really good or if the Finka boost helped her that much. Overall, though, I can definitely say she needs a huge nerf. The top 2 things I think should happen are she should lose her 20 armor that she gives everybody, and she should also lose the recoil reduction. And one other thing that I guess you could add if you want, but I don't think is highly necessary, is that it shouldn't affect everyone on the team. It should only affect people within a certain radius. But anyways, moving on. Talk about Ella here for a second, talking about how she's now much more balanced than before, which, as you can see up here, back to the graph, is true. She still has a high win rate, but her pick rate is back in line with what they want, which is about 27.5, I think, right there. But yeah, Ella's now considered balanced. She has almost no picks at all in the Pro League, as far as I'm aware, but in ranked, at least, she is more balanced. And here they talk about unique operator gadgets, which is kind of their way of saying that they've fucked up with a few things. The 2 main ones being Blitz and Glaz, saying that although they want unique operator gadgets, it makes it very hard to balance them when it disrupts, the core gameplay of Siege. Like how Blitz has a shield completely to protect himself when he runs in, and then Glaz can use smokes in his thermal scope to fight people that can't fight back. And then they're basically going to keep changing operators to try to, bring in line their pick rate while also not making their mechanics too frustrating. And then the last thing in the entire patch notes is talking about the current meta, which I'm sure most of you can agree with, is that the current meta has felt a lot faster. They said that the average round length has gone down from 224 to 215. On the overall, that's pretty significant. Like a 9-second difference doesn't seem like much, but in a round that only has 3 minutes, 9 seconds can be considered a huge chunk of that. We also don't know where they're getting the total averages from. If, say, the 224 average is from the very first ranked game that Siege ever had all the way up until White Noise the last day, and then the 215 is including all of that data I already mentioned and Chimera, then the fact that one small season in the past 2.5 years was able to bring down the entire average down by 9 seconds, that's a huge, huge change. But it'd be very important to know where they're actually getting this information from and how they're measuring it. Because it's very hard to bring down an average of something over a few years, but it's much easier to bring it down when it's something over a few months. If they're just comparing white noise to Operation Chimera, then that means it hasn't sped up that much. But if they're talking about on the overall, like the last 2.5 years, then that's a huge change. But yeah, they're hoping that with the line nerfs that it'll change how the meta feels and it won't be as quick, but we'll see. I don't think they listed anywhere here where the patch notes are, or when the patch notes are actually going live. They talk about the AMA. Again, I'm going to assume that the patch notes will probably come out once the Pro League is done this season, which I think is in a month from now. I'm pretty sure it's somewhere near the end of May, but then the next season should be starting in June, so I'm not too sure what they're going to do here, because this would be a pretty big change right before the Invitational, or not the Invitationals, but the end of season Pro League. Yeah, we'll see. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below about all these changes. Personally, I'm happy on the overall. There's no big complaints here. But yeah, I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. Anyways, take care, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.